Shabbat Shalom. Once upon a time in a land far away, the moon came to the sun and said, "It isn't fair that you get to shine during the day while it's warm, while I have to shine at night when it's cold." The sun saw how upset the moon had become, and so she promised him, "I will have a coat made for you to keep you warm." So the sun gathered all of the most famous tailors in the town to tackle this project. But try as they might, the tailors could not figure out how to make such a coat. For sometimes the moon was big, but other times the moon was small. The famous tailors threw up their hands. No coat could be made for the moon. But there was another group of tailors, a lesser-known bunch in the town, but a very eager group all the same. And these tailors were convinced that they could create a coat for the moon. They thought and thought and thought. The problem of the moon's changing size was an obstacle, but they were adamant that it wasn't insurmountable. Finally, after a long while, Yankel the tailor said, "We need a material that is light and airy and provides a good amount of stretch. What do you think about the clouds as our fabric?" And everyone rejoiced. Yes, the clouds are a perfect solution. "But how do we get the clouds?" someone asked. "They're so high up in the sky." Yankel thought, well, there are times when the clouds come down to the earth in a fog. We could grab the clouds then and get to work sewing a beautiful coat for the moon. "Yes," said the tailors. "But will the clouds be warm enough?" said another. "Oh," chimed the tailors, "they are quite thin." Suddenly, Yankel jumped to his feet and said, "I've got it. We'll capture some stars and sew those into the clouds as well. Their light will provide the warmth we need." "And how will we get the stars?" asked one of the tailors. Said Yankel, "The stars don't only float in the sky, but we see them in the river. We'll capture them there." "Yes," said the tailors, and they were ecstatic. But how will we sew the stars into the fog? Again, things seemed hopeless. Sigh. The moon needed a coat, and our tailors needed a solution. Once again, Yankel exploded with joy. "I have it. One night, when the fog comes in and rests on the river, we will borrow the bellows from our friends, the blacksmiths, and we'll blow the fog into the river where it will pick up the stars naturally. And when it floats back up to the sky, it will take the stars with it. And that way the moon will have a coat to cover it and keep him warm." And so that is what the tailors did. On one foggy night, they went to the river with their blacksmith bellows and blew the clouds over the river. And they saw how the stars stuck to the sides of the clouds. And when the fog finally lifted and became a cloud once more, the tailors looked up at the sky and saw that the clouds surrounded the moon on all sides. And it was full of stars and sparkled with light and warmth. At last, the moon had a coat that could grow as big as needed or as small to keep him warm even on the coolest of nights. And the moon still wears that coat when needed to this day. Next time you see the moon surrounded by clouds, think of Yankel and the tailors who never gave up on reaching for the sky. This Hasidic story, adapted by Howard Schwartz and Barbara Rush from Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, is an ode to the night sky, with all of its magnificence and mystery and depth. Our ardent tailors stand in for the awestruck human inside all of us, the inner child who looks up and wonders, why are the moon and stars and clouds suspended above us? And what exactly are their purpose in the sky? How can we know more about them? How might we draw nearer to them? Though the story is quite simple and naive, its narrative captures the wonder and fascination so many have with space. It is a fascination that ignites human ingenuity, a fascination that sparks unbounded imagination. That night sky with its radiant moon, its dynamic star formations, its endless landscapes and limitless depth can hypnotize even the most skeptical of humans. The Taylors, who were certainly not skeptics, were inspired to think big and dream hard in order to solve this cosmological quandary, how to find a coat for the moon. And while it could be argued that the Taylors' thought experiments lacked scientific rigor, they still were important expressions of their inquisitiveness, their curiosity. That is, in order to create a coat for the moon, these Taylors had to ponder very practical questions like, what kind of materials could hold up to the moon's changing shape? How dense are the clouds, or how vaporous? How would one manipulate a star? But so too did they ponder the philosophical. What is our relationship to the moon and clouds and stars? And what is their relationship to one another? What secrets do they hold about our origins, about the universe, about God? This week, many secrets of our universe were revealed to us through the most breathtaking pictures captured by the new James Webb Telescope, a magnificently sophisticated instrument that is now orbiting the sun 1 million miles away from Earth. The cosmic landscapes that we've been privileged to see are as mind-blowing as they are stunning. In particular, the Carina Nebula cosmic cliffs are almost too astonishing to believe. As described by the New York Times, the Carina Nebula is both a star nursery and home to some of the most luminous and explosive stars in the Milky Way. Seen in infrared, the nebula resembled a looming, eroded coastal cliff dotted with hundreds of stars that astronomers had never seen before. Not only were there stars never before seen or heard of, but there were structures of the kind no astronomer had ever identified. In fact, the Webb telescope can peer deeper into space than we've ever been able to see. As reported by news outlets, this unparalleled space observatory can look 13.6 billion light years into space, shedding light on a universe recently born. We are talking about creation here. We are talking about the fundamental origin of life. We have a view onto these hitherto known but never before seen or even imagined processes and eruptions and explosions. Of one of the first images released, that of an ancient galaxy field, NASA reported, we are looking back in time within a billion years after the Big Bang, when viewing the youngest galaxies in this field. We suddenly have a front row seat to Genesis chapter 1 and the history of our universe. And there is so much yet to discover, so many thrilling breakthroughs just beyond the horizon. Who knows what's coming for this telescope, but I'm sure we're going to have a lot of surprises, noted Renee Doyon, principal investigator for one of the Webb's instruments. This event blew me away, said astronomer and former Webb collaborator Alan Dressler. We're in for a great adventure. Indeed, the cosmological ride of our lives is only just beginning. A scientific revolution is afoot, and we have the monumental opportunity to share in it and bear witness to its transformative power. It is a gift of unfathomable proportions to see our universe revealed in such vibrant and vivid detail. It is as mind-blowing as it is awe-inspiring, as ground-shifting as it is heart-humbling, but only if we lift our eyes to see it. Truth be told, in these frenetic and chaotic times, we don't often lift our eyes from the tasks and responsibilities directly in front of us. We are often overwhelmed by the harried and demanding lives we lead, and our focus is often laser thin, sometimes by choice, but often out of what feels like necessity. Sometimes we cast our eyes down in order that we might purely survive. And yet, in casting our eyes downward, we miss so much, closing ourselves off from worlds upon worlds we simply do not see. Writes Abraham Joshua Heschel in his book, God in Search of Man. Small is the world that most of us pay attention to, and limited our concern. In order to ascertain what he describes as the sublime, the wonder, mystery, awe, and glory all around us, we must, he says, lift up our eyes and see. It is as simple as it is complex, as easy as it is unbelievably hard. In this week's Torah portion, read so beautifully by Rabbi Kahn, we bear witness to this very challenge as we follow the seer Balaam, a man who ironically does not see much of what exists in front of him. Balaam is famous for blessing the Israelites when called upon to curse them, but he is also known for cruelly beating his donkey when he stops 3 times along their path. Balaam doesn't realize that the donkey is halted by a messenger of God. Only when God uncovers Balaam's eyes is Balaam able to not only recognize the error of his ways, but to see the divine presence before him, the glory in his midst. For all of the whimsy in our text, Balaam in this moment stands in for so many of us who essentially walk blindly through this world, likely missing many manifestations of the divine along the way. But the unfurling of our universe is one manifestation we ought not miss. We are awash in celestial glory at this staggering moment in history. We have peered into the deep wells of space and found elements of our creation story. We have discovered the birthing place of our stars. We have stumbled upon starry visions that rival the most iconic works of art, feasts for our eyes, and spiritual jolts for our souls. In a world so infused with ugliness and horror, there is tremendous hope in these magnificent discoveries, that we can all be united in our sense of collective awe is something magical and meaningful and sacred. Let us look upon the heavens and stand awestruck. Let us embrace the mind-blowing nature of what science can do. Let us lift up our eyes and savor the incomprehensible vastness of our universe, of which we now know an inkling more, an inkling that will surely lead to a groundswell of understanding. Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi teaches, in our search for God, we start with wonder. So it was with the tailors creating a coat for the moon, and so it is with us, gazing at the veritable edges of our universe. Wonder abounds, and the search has just begun. Kenny Hiratzon.